Hi Marisol, how are you today?
Hello, Hero. How are you?
Yeah, good, thank you. Thanks for agreeing to come on and be part of our European interview series. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and where you work and a little bit about your firm and yourself?
Of course. Yes, my name is Marisol Arellano Lundberg. So I work at Familjens Jurist, which is a solicitor firm in Stockholm, Sweden. And I work for the international desk. So all international matters is in our department. I used to live abroad myself. I've been an expat wife for 5 years. So I lived 2 years in Dubai with my husband, lived on the Palm, very nice and beautiful. And then we moved to France and lived there for 3 years. And then I ran my own business for 5 years. And then I heard about this opportunity at the international desk. And I said, okay, I really want to work with international matters and international private law. So now I'm working at Familjens Jurist, international desk.
So tell us what languages you speak other than English.
Spanish, Swedish, and I did study French at university in France for 1 year, but I need to refresh my French. But I can't say I speak French.
Yeah, but plenty of languages. That's great. So could English or Welsh expats, if they were living in Sweden, could they divorce there? And what would the rules be around that?
Well, if they're expats in Sweden, they can file for a divorce, but it all depends if they have established this habitual residence. So if they have established habitual residence here in Sweden, they can file for divorce.
Sorry, go on.
Yes, but this is like when you're registered, when you have your life in a new country, when you're considered as living in the new country.
Okay, so it's 1 year from the date you arrived, or is it more about how much you're settled in and that sort of thing?
Yes, exactly. Previously, we thought it was 12 months, approximately 12 months. But now we have seen the cases from the European Court of Justice, and we know it's not a time limit or duration of time that you need to have stayed in Sweden for 12 months or 6 months. It's more about your intentions of staying in Sweden, how you have integrated in the community, and your future plans. So it could be just after a few months.
Okay, but if you were really well integrated, but you were planning to move back to England after your contract of 2 years, would you think that would be enough?
Oh, yes. So 2 years, like the expat contract is usually for 2 or 3 years. So of course you have established the habitual, what we call the habitual residence in Sweden. So you have this habitual residence just after a few months. So if you want to, if you seek for assistance, judicial assistance, you can do it in a Swedish court.
Okay. So usually what people want to know if they're going to get divorced and there's a choice of jurisdictions is how Sweden would deal with the division of assets on divorce.
Well, that depends, because we have this, we have divided, so it's one jurisdiction, one country, and we have also the applicable law. So it could be Swedish court, but it could be a foreign law. So for instance, if you, since we're a member of the European Union, we have this European regulation, how to manage division after divorce. So if you got married after the 29th of January 2019, then the first common habitual residence is that country's law that applies in your division of assets.
So okay.
It could be Swedish court, but if you live in the UK and then after you get married and you move to France, and then you live there for 6 months, and then you move to Sweden and live in Sweden for 30 years. It's Swedish jurisdiction, yes, but it's French law.
Wow. Okay. So would that be the case even if it was a country outside of Europe? So say, for example, in your situation, if you went to Dubai straight after you got married, would the Swedish courts then be applying UAE law in your case?
Well, it depends, because I also wanted to say that we have this time with older marriages. So for older marriages before the 29th of January 2019, it's almost the same rule. So Swedish choice of law rules apply. And it's the same rule that the first common habitual resident will apply. But if you move, then the applicable law will change. So
okay.
So it depends for all the marriages and newer marriages. So if, like in my case, I moved to France. So if something would have happened in France, like for instance, we wanted to divorce in France, it would be French law, because the applicable law is changing every second year.
Right. Okay.
With the older rules, but with the new rules, you can move around and live in 5 different countries, but it's still the same first country, that country's law that applies.
Wow. And how do the Swedish judges apply the law? How do they find out what it is? How do they establish what the law is in these other countries? Because sometimes it's hard enough in your own country to advise people, let alone taking these other laws. How do they work out what the law is in the other countries?
When I heard about this, because I went for training, and I said, like, I don't know how to manage this. How can I apply Syrian law? But they told me that I need to have a broad network.
Okay, so you would ask a lawyer in that jurisdiction.
Yes.
And then would they sort of act as an expert in Swedish courts? Or do each person have their own one?
No. Like we would do the work in the Swedish court, but we would consult with, for instance, the French attorneys.
Yeah.
It's French law.
Yeah. Wow. And what about spousal maintenance? Is that awarded often in Sweden?
Well, again, it depends on which law you can use. So it's going to be Swedish court, of course, if they're living in Sweden, but it could be a foreign law. And this is because Sweden is member of the European Union. So we have this protocol from Hague from 2007 saying that, you could choose, you have different laws that you can apply. So if we say that it's going to be Swedish law, according to Swedish law, you don't receive any maintenance after the divorce. Okay. So, but we have some cases where there has been a spouse that has been staying for 30 years at home, has moved abroad because of the husband, and because of the marriage has not been able to work in Sweden. And in rare cases, they say, okay, we can, in this case, it was her, she can have maintenance to support herself. But otherwise, Swedish welfare is well established here, and the system is built so you can work and have children at the same time, and you can be divorced and have children and childcare, and you only pay about 100 euros per child.
For a month's childcare?
Yes.
Wow. And it's very good quality childcare as well, isn't it?
Yes.
Wow. So it's just
the system
really
is different.
exceptional cases where the wife usually is a lot older and hasn't been able to work, and then it would be very difficult to her to rejoin the workplace.
Exactly.
Okay. And what about any assets being excluded from the pot for division? So things like inherited assets, how are they treated in Sweden? Or things or assets that you had before you got married?
Well, when you get married, all the assets become joint assets. So everything is going to be in the division, in the future division, unless you have written a prenuptial agreement, matrimonial agreement, and register it. In Sweden, we do it at the Swedish tax agency. If you have inherit money and it says that it's private property, of course it's excluded, but it has to say that it's private property. Otherwise, it will be included in the division.
So it has to say that in the prenup, that the inheritance
in the
is
prenup,
okay,
or any other contract.
Right. Okay. Yes. So if someone's leaving something to you in their will, they need to say, "This is I'm just leaving it to this person and it's private property."
Yes.
Okay. What's your sort of starting point in relation to children? What is the sort of the normal order in relation to children, if there is such a thing as a normal order in Sweden?
Well, if you're married, the normal starting point is joint custody.
Okay.
But if you're not married, just living together and having a child, and then you separate, then it's the starting point, sole custody to the mother, and she needs to write to social service that she agrees on giving the custody to the father.
Okay. So when it's joint custody, does that really mean that the child will spend half its time with its mum and half the time with its dad? Or
well, that's the usual main rule.
Okay. And how is that split? Sort of a week with mum, a week with dad, or does every family have a different way of working it out?
Sorry, can you repeat?
So how does it usually work? Does the child spend a week with the mother and a week with the father? Or does every family have a different way of working it out?
Oh, yes. When the children are small, they usually say it's best for the child if they live with the mother 2 days and the father 2 days, and then they switch for 3 days. So 2 days, 2 days, 3 days. And when they get older, it's 7 days in a row, and they have this. They switch the children every 7th day. Yeah. But I need to say something here that I need to point out that the guardianship is automatically by law divided between the mother and the father. So both the parents are legal guardians after the divorce if they were married. But if they were only living together, the guardianship is only to the mother.
So what does guardianship mean under Swedish law? Does that mean sort of important decisions have to be taken by both?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so it's like the equivalent of parental responsibility that we have that's similar if you've been married. And do the Swedish court use alternative dispute resolution? Things like mediation, collaborative law, other ways of dealing with disputes?
Yes. Well, mediation is not that common yet. It's growing. But they have solved this situation with social service. So social service, they can have these conversations with the parents so they can collaborate better and speak about the children and how they're going to do with the children. So it has been mainly social services assignment or tasks. But now it's changing. So the courts are more open to mediation, and we're changing the law to see how we can apply mediation law, or have mediators here.
Okay.
But it's growing. But 1 to 3% is solved by like true mediators, as you know it. But we still don't have this mediation institute as.
Okay, so 1 to 3%, 1 to 3% only.
Yes, so it's mainly, the mediation is mainly done by the court and by the attorneys.
Right, okay, so they're trying to sort of negotiate between themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then another question I have for you, what about leave to remove? So if you have two parents living in Sweden and they separate and the mother wants to move to another country with the children, what is the Swedish court's view on that?
Well, if they have joint custody, she has to ask the father for permission.
Yeah, okay. And if he says no?
She can't move. So that's why we have custody battles, because one of the ex-spouse wants to move to Marbella or another nice place with a new partner, and they can't do it because the ex is saying, okay, I don't want my children to leave. So we have these battles because of that.
Yeah, and are they usually successful in getting sole custody and being able to move? Obviously, it depends on the circumstances of the case, but how sympathetic are the Swedish courts to that sort of situation, particularly maybe where the mother is not Swedish and she wants to go back to her home country?
Well, if she wants to go back to her home country, she can still, we have this difference, as you know, with the court and applicable law. So it could be another law that is more beneficial for her. But if we're talking about Swedish law, it's always what's in the best for the child, the child's interest. And the main rule is that the child's best interest is to have access to both of the parents.
Regularly, yeah, I can understand.
Regularly, yes.
Yeah, okay. Oh, well, that's really interesting, Marisol. Thank you so much. Is there anything else you think is important to tell us about Swedish law that I haven't asked you?
No, I think that you need to bear in mind that even though you live in Sweden, it doesn't have to be Swedish law. So sometimes when we work in these kind of cases where we see like, okay, maintenance, we know that it's very little in Sweden according to Swedish law, but we know it's much more in the UK. So we try to switch the battle to the UK because we know it's much better for the client.
Yes, yeah.
So bear that in mind, that it could be another law, even though it's a Swedish court.
Yeah, no, it's very interesting. Well, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.